All right, guys. So, as I said, Friday, we're actually going to get into it. So, you did pre-read a little bit, and this is what I'm going to go over today is does just follow the text. So, we always want to start with the bell ringer, as I said before, and you can answer this in Google Forms, and I'll post the link. First question I have for you guys to get us started, to get our minds focused and ready, is what does the name Pennsylvania? Or, a lot of people know this already, but tell me what you think or what you know Pennsylvania actually means, what the word means. The second question I have for you is list some interesting and notable things or facts or anything really that you know about Pennsylvania. So every year I always get a ton of interesting different answers. So let me know what you know, let me know what you think. All right, and we'll move on. So this is just following our text, as I said before, Pennsylvania geography, and it kind of just gives you an introduction of Pennsylvania. Our objectives for this video are to describe where the state's name comes from, so some of you already know. Identify the location of the state, which is definitely self-evident to most of us, right? We're here. But for some other students, maybe they came from a different place. Sometimes we get an exchange student, like from Belgium 2 years ago and so on. So we will go over that. We'll look at the state's climate. Again, another piece that's like very evident. When we do learn this, or if you read it in the text, you're probably like, oh, well, duh, like I live that, I see that, but, we're still going to go over it briefly at least. We'll also analyze the 5 major regions of Pennsylvania. So here's an outline specifically of what we do get into, and let's get started. So how did PA get its name? Well, in 1681, our state's name was created by William Penn and the King of England, Charles II. To start off, well, Pennsylvania was inhabited by hundreds of thousands of people, right? And we'll get into that in chapter 2 and 3. But Pennsylvania was covered in probably an estimated 98% of trees and forests. So extremely, extremely, extremely dense with trees. And that's kind of where the name comes from, or at least Sylvania, which just means forest land in Latin. So, King Charles, he wanted to honor Penn's father, Sir William Penn. They have the same name, so I'm not trying to confuse you. But he was an admiral, a Navy officer, and a politician in England. He did have a lot of clout. He was friends with the king, and he often helped his son, the young William Penn, with the king, and when he got in trouble all the time. But William Penn, he was a nobleman, a writer, and one of the earliest Quakers, and he kind of went with the name. He's like, yep, that's fine. Pennsylvania, it's honoring his father, and also, I guess, acknowledging all the forests. So Pennsylvania is a commonwealth. It is actually only one of 4, and it's basically a state. It's synonymous with it. It's the difference being commonwealths are supposed to be founded for the common good or the commonwealth of the people. Remember, when we do talk about words or key terms, a lot of times it's not a trap. It is what it says it is. So for us to look at a word that maybe we're not used to or we're not sure what it means, like I said, it's oftentimes just what it looks like. There's other commonwealths, like I said, such as Massachusetts, Virginia, Kentucky. You can even say some of our territories like Puerto Rico, the Mariana Islands, or Guam. They also are, but there's not really any difference. They have the same politics, they have the same laws. Everything's the same with the states. The only difference is pretty much the title. Here's just an image of William Penn in the king's chamber, and that would be the king. This was also an image of him later. Now let's look at Pennsylvania's location. Pennsylvania is 46,054 square miles and the 33rd largest state. It is one of the southernmost states in the northeast region of the U.S. and also considered to be in the mid-Atlantic region. So if you said either of these, like that would be correct. If we're talking about general location, you say like in the middle of the East Coast, something like that, or if you wanted to use the waterway like this, like mid-Atlantic region, that's fine. And oftentimes you'll see districts or even like sports, such as like the NCAA. Like they set up things, they will set up like their leagues, ranks, brackets, and whatever based on these regions. So this isn't just for like our book. Like other people actually use these to identify where they're located. Pennsylvania does have 6 border states, and I will show you quick the border states. But first, here's our general location. We should be able to use a world map to find it, I hope. It's just another map. And I do like to go over this because oftentimes I see students that really struggle with even knowing like where we are on a world map, where the U.S. Oftentimes they're not sure what the other stuff is. So I want to make sure I just cover everything so that we're not confused. One of the ways to find it easily, if it's on a map like this, like you just look for Lake Erie. So that would be Lake Erie, so it's right there. There would be Pennsylvania. I said it does have 6 border states. The one that typically kids get messed up when they try to think about it in their heads, a lot of times kids say Virginia, which isn't connected, but you can say West Virginia, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, okay, but not Virginia. It doesn't actually touch. Oop. And here's another map. I used this map just to show my kids in class the different mountain ranges, such as the Appalachian, Allegheny Mountains, and the Pocono Mountains, being the main ones. And also the Mason-Dixon line. This would be the bottom. We will get into that later, and I'll explain it. I basically set this up just to help kids. Another border here would be the Delaware. And we'll get into the borders and how they expand later. I just wanted to show maps. Alright, sorry about that. Some basic Pennsylvania facts that your books lists for this is the capital is Harrisburg. Wasn't always that way, but again, we'll get into that first. I'm just trying to follow the text. The bird is a ruffed grouse, or the ruffed grouse. The flower is the mountain laurel. The tree is the hemlock. Dog is the Great Dane, and the colors are blue and gold. So this is mountain laurel. This is actually Harrisburg, so our capital. This is our flag, which will hopefully help you remember the blue and the gold. And it is kind of cool, and it is kind of symbolic. For instance, the horses, they kind of symbolize hard work. They often would be used agriculturally. The ship symbolizes commerce and trade. We do have a deep seaport. We have tons of water and waterways. We used to have a ton of canals. The plow would represent Pennsylvania's natural resources. The 3 wheats show how fertile our soil is and our wealth. And the bald eagle, which it would be a symbol from the Iroquois League, would be used here to show like, yes, this is Pennsylvania. We have our own unique ways. We have fertile soil, water. We are an agricultural giant as well as an industrial giant. But although we have our own Pennsylvania identity, we also are still loyal to our country, the U.S., since this is also a symbol of the U.S. has taken. So it is a neat flag, and it does actually mean something. Just to give you more visuals on some of those facts that we went over, here's the ruffed grouse. Here's a Great Dane. They're gigantic dogs, and there's a hemlock. So chances are with all these things, like, well, maybe not the Great Danes running everywhere, but you've probably seen these things, and that's why they become the state, animal, flower, and so on. Some more introductory information on Pennsylvania would be that it has 67 counties. 67 counties. An easy way to remember where we live is that we probably have the most strange county in PA, maybe anywhere, but Northumberland, this is the one that we live in. It is very weird and cut up weird, but you have 67 counties. We have 56 cities, 959 boroughs, and 1,546 townships. Pennsylvania is big. It has a big population. And one other thing to mention about this is that we do only have one town, and that town is Bloomsburg. Now let's look a little bit more. I know I was just talking about population, um, but Philadelphia is our largest city. There's our population. Next is Pittsburgh, and it's a far drop off. So Philadelphia is actually huge and gigantic. Some of our other large towns include Allentown, Erie, Reading, based on population. And then you can compare that with where we live. There's Shamokin's population. There's cool townships. And Pennsylvania in general has 12.81 million people. So it is one of the largest states on population, even though it was only the 33rd largest based on size, like actual area. So it is large. Let's keep going. Pennsylvania's climate, again, is going to be obvious to you guys, is listed as a humid continental climate that includes the 4 seasons. Okay, some of you guys are like, duh. Well, you know, it's different in all places. Like you go up to Alaska, you go to the Gobi Desert, you go to, let's say, South Africa, you go to some of the tropics along the equator. Like it's going to be way different. Okay, you get these people that in some areas barely see the sun, and you get this some areas that barely or don't ever see snow, right? So don't take it for granted. This is more technical for where we live, humid continental. Our winters are often cold or even below freezing. We do get snow. The summers are often hot and humid. Again, you're like, duh, duh, duh. Growing season is typically early in the spring for us, and harvesting typically ends at the end of the summer or early fall. Our climate does provide rainfall, and it's great for farming. We are an agricultural giant. Pennsylvania is a farming state, even though it is also like a manufacturing and industrial state as well. Occasionally, there's a seasonal storm that comes from the ocean, but often our weather comes from the interior. And this is where a lot of wind and weather fronts happen. The rain averages about 34 to 52 inches per year, but you know, this is just an average. It could drastically change, and it has. Our record heat in 1936 was 111 degrees. Our record low was negative 42 degrees in 1904. On average, Pennsylvania experiences 7 tornadoes a year. And once again, they mostly come from the western and southern parts. So a lot of it comes from the interior. All right, I'm almost done. I'm trying not to lose you because I know some of this stuff isn't the most exhilarating, but we got to keep going. And let's talk about the 5 geographic regions of Pennsylvania. And we'll just start with the Erie Plain. It's one of the smaller ones. It only stretches 4 miles in width. And it's a flat land. It's along the Great Lake Erie, so it does have super rich soil. It has rich sand, salt, and it's perfect for orchards and vineyards, such as like winemaking. So it is a neat little area that they break up. The next one would be the Allegheny Plateau, and this covers the majority of Pennsylvania, about 60% of Pennsylvania. And in a plateau, hopefully you guys know, it's just an elevated section of land that's mostly level. Of course, I showed you the other map, like we do have some mountain ranges, so it's not it's not like level by our standards, but the elevation in general is, and it is considered a plateau. Well, we do have the Pocono Mountains, and how these are created, you know, plate tectonics, and also glaciers thousands of years ago would basically carve out like everything. That's why we have it the way it is. The next region is the Ridge and Valley region, so you'll never guess what's there. Well, of course, ridges and valleys and mountains and so on. The Appalachian Mountains go through this region, and this is the region that we live in. And it just has many valleys. This is where you get the different names, or a lot of universities, colleges, like, you know, Lebanon Valley, Delaware Valley, Cumberland Valley, Lehigh Valley, and so on. The next one is Piedmont. This is a higher elevation than the Atlantic coastal plain, and it does go up. And this is where a lot of the farming is done, where a lot of the fields are. There's a lot of forests as well, but it essentially has a ton of fertile soil there. And you'll find, again, most of the farming being done there. Now, the last one for you guys is the Atlantic coastal plain. And thousands of years ago, this was probably all underwater. This is where Philadelphia would be, and also our state's deep seawater port. Okay, so just as a quick refresher as we're ending, we were just going over PA's name, the location, some basic facts, just all the stuff from your text, just introductory stuff about Pennsylvania. We also looked at the population, its climate, and PA geographic regions. Now, although this is basic introductory stuff and it's not like super exhilarating, like I said before, it is important. It does, at least with the geographic stuff, it does set the foundation for everything else we talk about. You know what I'm saying? Without this geography, we don't have the history we have. Without these regions, without the farm regions, without all the water, and then our canals and so on. Like, this is exactly why people are in the areas. This is exactly why we're creating wealth in these certain areas. So these are important and they are paramount to our history. Now, for the review questions that I want you to answer in the Google Forms. How did Pennsylvania get its name? So just 2 sentences, how Pennsylvania got its name. The second one is describe where its location is. Again, this should be self-evident to you guys. But how exactly did we describe it? What were the, I guess, key terms you could say? Last one, name several characteristics of our climate. So once again, this should be obvious, so just name a couple things. We'll be getting into water forms next, and we'll be reading and talk about different water. So that's what's coming up. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and that's it. See you guys. Thanks.